Military operation in Ukraine, the 30th of April. 40 Russian troops stop actions of 2 Ukrainian reconnaissance groups. Vostok Group. According to head of the press center of the Vostok Group, in the Zaporozhye direction, the crew of the Jotsant self-propelled gun destroyed a tank and 4 militants in the area of the Volnoy Pole settlement. Copyright Defense Ministry. TASS Archive, Moscow, April 30th. TASS. Russian troops stopped the actions of 2 reconnaissance groups of the Ukrainian armed forces in the South Donetsk direction, destroyed 2 enemy unmanned aerial vehicles (UAVs) and 2 Paladin self-propelled howitzers. Head of the press center of the Vostok Group, Alexander Gordiev, told TASS. In the South Donetsk direction, the advanced units of the Vostok Group suppressed the actions of 2 enemy reconnaissance groups, liquidated 8 militants. The crew of the T-80 tank destroyed an armored vehicle and 3 militants in the Ugoldar area. The crew of the STRELA-10 anti-aircraft missile system and the operator of the Igla Man portable air defense system destroyed Fury and Valkyrie unmanned aerial vehicles. According to radio intercepts, 2 self-propelled artillery installations Paladin of the enemy were damaged by artillery fire in the Elizavetovka area. He said. According to Gordiev, in the Zaporozhye direction, the crew of the Jotsant self-propelled gun destroyed a tank and 4 militants in the area of the Volnoy Pole settlement, and the Akatsaya self-propelled gun crew destroyed a truck and 5 militants in the area of the Novopol settlement. Artillery fire also destroyed 2 enemy strongholds in the area of the settlements of Stepovo and Severnaya Dorozhnyenka. More than 10 militants were killed. As part of the counter-battery fight, the penicillin artillery reconnaissance system detected and the crew of the Malka self-propelled artillery mount destroyed an American-made howitzer at a firing position near the settlement of Zatoshi. The head of the press center added. Vostok 2018. 10 years of Russian strategic exercises and warfare preparation. The visibility, scale and scope of Russian military exercises have been a focus of Western media and specialist literature since 2014. Russia conducted Vostok 2018, the latest iteration of its annual strategic exercises, from early July to the 17th of September 2018. Vostok, meaning East, is part of a system of strategic exercises that the Russian armed forces have been developing since 2009. It is one of the 4 named annual strategic exercises conducted on a rotating basis among 4 of Russia's 5 military districts. 1. These visible events represent a small fraction of what is a whole-of-government and nationwide Russian effort to develop the ability to conduct large-scale conflict on short notice against a major military power and to influence potential adversaries. To better understand and more accurately assess their implications for NATO allies, Vostok 2018 and all of Russia's strategic exercises, including large-scale SNAP exercises, need to be seen in their full context. The strategic context. Russia's chief foreign and defense policy aims are to reassert a leading role for itself on the world scene, to disrupt the current European security architecture to force negotiation of a new one, and to rebuild a security perimeter against perceived external threats, primarily the United States and its NATO allies. To these ends, Russia has launched a strategic destabilization campaign against the post-Cold War liberal order, which President Putin views as counter to Russia's long-term interests. Military exercises and operations are part of that campaign. This multidimensional campaign is the proper context within which to consider Russia's strategic exercises and illuminates their instrumentality for achieving its foreign, security and defense policy aims, and the related implications for the security of NATO. allies. Russia's first use of military force to revise the Euro-Atlantic security environment came in August 2008 in its short war against Georgia. The conflict exposed significant capability shortfalls in the Russian armed forces and sparked the military overhaul that continues to this day. This overhaul reflects Moscow's evolving strategic worldview in line with the Russian perception that conflict can break out with little or no warning in multiple strategic directions. It is underpinned by the Russian leadership's interpretation of the color revolutions of the 1990s and early 2000s as, from Moscow's perspective, a non-kinetic form of destabilization operation waged by Western powers. The comprehensive military reform and modernization efforts launched after the war with Georgia, including the exercise program, have transformed the Russian armed forces into an effective tool in Russia's destabilization campaign against the West, with major implications for Euro-Atlantic security. The capabilities developed enabled Russia's aggressive actions against Ukraine in 2014 and its rapid intervention in Syria in 2015. Russia's revived military power is a central element of the destabilization campaign that it has been conducting in the Euro-Atlantic area for the last 10 years. At their 2018 summit in Brussels, Allied leaders declared that Russia's aggressive actions, including the threat and use of force to attain political goals, challenge the alliance and are undermining Euro-Atlantic security and the rules-based international order. Exercising for strategic operations. The scheduled strategic exercises Zapad, Vostok, TSENTR, Kavkaz are the capstone event of the Russian Armed Forces annual training cycle. During the several weeks of their actual duration, the exercises fulfill the General Staff's precedentially mandated task to organize and test the transition of the Russian Federation from peace to war. After completing the transition, they test national preparedness for large-scale, high-intensity warfare against a technologically advanced peer adversary. Any assessment of Russian strategic exercises should also take into account the large-scale SNAP, no-notice exercises too that President Putin reinstituted in 2013, of which 4 to 6 are conducted annually at various levels, including military district, fleet, or service or branch, and encompassing units from across most of the armed forces in the course of a year. The scheduled and SNAP strategic exercises are conducted under the direction of the Minister of Defense and the operational control of the General Staff through the National Center for the Direction of Defense. Command and control is a key aspect, testing the effectiveness and readiness of command echelons from the national level down to the brigade level. On this basis, the General Staff has the ability to conduct a strategic command post exercise that depicts national mobilization and conflict escalation up to and including general war, regardless of the apparent scale and duration of the field training segment of the annual strategic exercise. This overall context makes clear that Russia's strategic exercises are oriented to multidirectional, theater-level conflict and their capability and capacity building effects are strategic. It is useful to think of this exercise program as a kind of military circuit training, exercising different muscle groups on a rotating basis to strengthen the entire organism for the main event. Likewise, the command and control element are like the training of the mind that winning athletes undertake. Similarly, the capabilities built during the strategic exercises are generically applicable to potential future large-scale conflicts. With this as the model for the strategic exercises, even one as distant from NATO's borders as Vostok 2018 has, by design, implications for Allied security. The show of force and the actual exercise. Vostok 2018 was, in effect, two events. The first, and militarily more significant, took place at multiple locations from early July until September. The second was a scripted show of force, on the 13th of September, at the Sugol training range in the Trans-Baikal region. In line with standard Russian practice, the show of force was designed to send ambiguous and contradictory messages, images of growing military strength on the one hand and rhetoric of non-aggression and transparency on the other. For this event, Russia's senior military leaders drew the desired level of foreign attention to Vostok 2018 by stating publicly that approximately 300,000 troops, as well as 1,000 fixed-wing aircraft and helicopters, 80 ships, and 36,000 tanks, armored and other vehicles, would participate in an exercise unprecedented in scale since the Soviet-era Zapad 1981. This show of force on day 3 of the active phase of Vostok 2018 included live-fire exercises carried out under the observation of President Putin and the Chinese Minister of Defense. The participating Russian, Chinese and Mongolian forces conducted a massive parade of military vehicles to close the day's events. Despite the hype, the 13th of September activities were more a carefully orchestrated military demonstration than a real military exercise. It was staged for media cameras as a backdrop befitting President Putin's strongman image and his message of military strength to domestic and foreign observers. Nevertheless, one should not overlook the training value, from a logistics and combat service support perspective, of the movement of substantial forces and equipment to the Sugol range and their sustainment in the field. Point 3. The militarily more significant part of the Vostok exercise comprised 2 phases. The first, from July to early September, entailed weeks of logistics activities to move troops, equipment and supplies to their assembly and exercise areas. The second, active phase, from 11 to the 17th of September, encompassed the exercise activity and live-fire events at the Sugol Range and other land and maritime ranges in the Eastern Military District and at other locations across Russia. Were involved. This was, actually, the armed forces, 2 military districts, Central and Eastern, 2 fleets, Pacific and North, aviation, Army aviation and our fellow allies, the armed forces of China and Mongolia. In other words, the 300,000 troop figure was an approximate total of all personnel involved in every phase of preparation and execution of the Vostok 2018 from early July through to the 17th of September. The 300,000 figure may be plausible for this timeframe but leaves open the question of the number of participating combat troops. One historical study of the ratio of support to combat troops in modern war suggests, out of a total of 300,000 troops, a possible range of 75,000–100,000 combat troops might have participated at the various ranges during the active phase of Vostok 2018. However, this is a very rough estimate.